Good afternoon. My name is Roger Hitchcock. Welcome to the Applied Directorship Program Introduction. I trust you can hear me loud and clear. What I'd like to do in the next 45 minutes or so is take you through some thoughts around the Applied Directorship Program, what we do, how we run it, why we've put it together, and then how you can participate going forward. At Sadar, apologies, Sadar Group is Africa's leading educator, appointer, and guide of high performance boards of privately held companies and family businesses. We've had extensive experience throughout many parts of Africa. We currently have offices in Southern Africa, Eastern Africa, and Western Africa. And we are very excited to not just be working in different parts of the continent, but also working with really significant companies. Our core focus is on privately held companies. We work across the range, different sizes of companies, and especially focusing on family businesses where we believe there's a huge value to be added. We're very excited about a lot of the things that are happening on the African continent, specifically about things like the African Free Trade Agreement, that kind of thing. We have over 10 years experience in the space and have really been engaging with boards over a period of lots of changes. Many of the countries we work in have, during this period of time, upgraded, updated both their legislation as well as the codes of corporate governance. And so what we're seeing happening all over the continent as well as all over the world is obviously this increasing focus on the role of directors, the role of boards, and really questions around leadership in organizations. And so our role on the continent is to help directors, not just technically, but practically. We believe many directors are sitting there with lots of experience, and we all need to keep updating our skills as we go. You would have seen from the graphics and the pictures used that Sadar, we use mountaineering as one of our metaphors. The name Sadar actually comes from the name for the lead Sherpa in a mountain expedition, the lead guide in a mountain expedition. And as part of that, we believe very strongly that mountaineers do not learn to climb by solely completing a mountaineering degree. You never learn to climb a mountain purely by sitting in a classroom, but you learn it by doing the work of climbing the mountain. And directors are no different. Practical time in the boardroom is absolutely critical to the success of directors, of individual directors and of boards of directors. And we see where directors are successful, companies are also successful. And so that lays the foundations for this program that we call the Applied Directorship Program. And what I want to do is I want to provide you, I'm a senior partner in the Sadar Group, have been working with the group for a number of years, as well as being the person who facilitates the vast bulk of the programs, and have had many classroom hours experience working with boards, not just trying to answer the technical questions, but possibly more importantly, trying to answer the question, well, what do we actually do in the boardroom? A number of years ago, we sat down and we said, there's a need for more than just the multi-day high-impact training. There's a need for practical experience, an opportunity to explore the application of concepts in a workshop/classroom kind of context. And so it was with that in mind that we put together the framework we now call the Applied Directorship Program. We launched the first Applied Directorship Program the beginning of 2017 in South Africa. A year or so later, we launched in Kenya, and up to now we have launched 17 programs. And so we're looking to expand further, and that's why we're looking at expanding into the West African space as well, as we see a huge need and obviously a demand for this kind of applied practical approach. In putting the program together, we obviously wanted to ask the question, who are the people that we're speaking to that are getting the most value out of our engagement with them? And these are the kind of people. So is this you run a business, you're looking to implement a value-adding board. Technically, companies have a board from day one, but often they reach a threshold where they need to put in place a board. And the challenge, obviously, is this phrase value adding. Many boards operate, but we believe very strongly that the board of a company needs to add value to the company and needs to improve the performance. Secondly, you're taking over a family business, so looking to be recognized as a director that has the skills and knowledge to fulfill this role. We work with many family businesses and understand very intimately the challenges that families go through, especially in terms of the second, third, fourth, the multi-generational approach. And every family business that is successful obviously grows and will become multi-generational, but the steps you take at the different points in the growth of the business are critical to the survival of the business. I personally also believe very strongly that if businesses, family businesses, aren't governed well in the right way going forward, they can cause a lot of damage to relationships. And I suppose the phrase I use is that I believe relationships are more important than business. Business is essential and important, but if businesses are destroying relationships, especially family ones, then that's not right. And so rather govern the business than destroy the relationship. Many people are also looking for their first appointment as a non-executive director. One of the things that is happening internationally is a broader approach to boards. There's more emphasis on boards, more demand for professionalism on boards, and a growing group of people who are looking at it as a potential career opportunity, either because they've had some years experience in the boardroom and are wanting to expand further, or because they've run their own businesses and they want to then give back over time. And so it's essential to say, how do the skills of management rank or relate to the skills of directorship? So it does boil down to this fact that people are looking for opportunities to become directors, either internally. We often speak to people who've been approached internally in the businesses they operate in and offered or spoken to about a board level position, and it's often unclear as to what that entails. And so we believe that it's important to unpack that. And then there are many people out there who are saying we simply want to develop our skills. We want to grow as a non-executive director. We want other opportunities going forward. We also find on the other side, so we work with a lot of individuals who approach us and say, well, we need to learn the skills. But on the flip side, there are a growing number of privately held family businesses and often even listed companies and other entities. So expanding into the public sector space, state-owned enterprises, regulatory entities that are looking for directors. And the key thing that these entities are looking for are not just directors who understand the law and the technicalities of directorship, but also the demand is growing for directors who actually effectively contribute in the boardroom, who can actually add value, who can understand not just, as I said earlier, what the technicalities of the board look like, but also how to actually contribute, how to work together in the room. And so as we were putting together and working with these questions that we were getting in the marketplace, we obviously faced some interesting questions. How does our approach compare to the likes of an MBA? A lot of people ask us, so how does it compare? Some people say, I've done an MBA, do I need to do the directorship program? And one of the key differences is that an MBA, it's an audience issue. An MBA is obviously directed at management level, and many of the people we work with are highly qualified, highly experienced managers. And what we emphasize is that there is a difference between managing and governing. And many of the people who sit on boards have got a lot of deep management experience, but often that isn't translated very well into governance experience. And we see that all the time with boards that spend far too much time on operational issues, don't necessarily understand the mechanisms of governance, things like how do policies work, how do we govern as opposed to how do we manage. One of the other questions we've often had, and obviously we do offer the shorter term 1, 2, 3 day, week-long programs. The challenge with those programs is they're often very overwhelming. And I've often found in classrooms after 2 or 3 days, people are just saying, I can't take in much more. And so what we did is we said, how do we spread this out over a period of time? And so the program is developed into an 11-month program where we actually space out the information and then also provide an opportunity not just to cover the technicalities and the theories, but also to provide a board simulation. So part of the process, which I'll unpack for you during this time, is to say, how do we build some level of gamification, some level of simulation into the program so that it's not just an academic exercise, it's actually an experience of what it feels like to sit on, attend, be part of a board over the year or so that we're together. But to start, what I want to touch on as well is to again take a step back to say, well, what are some of the things that we see as key foundations or foundation stones to the program? And I often teach these or put these down as things they don't necessarily teach you at university or at, in an MBA program. The first one is a concept we refer to as 3 hats, and in essence and in a nutshell, it actually looks like this. And I'm gonna write on the screen. My writing isn't fantastic, but you'll get the gist of it. Is that in a business there are essentially 3 fundamental roles. We call them the 3 hats. And they look like this. We have the top, a range of different size circles, all independent of one another. In the middle, something that we sometimes refer to as a pizza, a circle with a number of circles in it, and at the bottom, a triangle. In terms of the 3 different roles of businesses, or the 3 hats, an important thing about governance is recognizing that in a company there are different roles that each have a different and often distinct interest in the company being governed. The first hat at the top is the shareholder hat. And the interest of shareholders is primarily about their own interests. It's legitimately about their own interests. Shareholding is something that I often refer to as legitimately selfish. Shareholders are distinct. They don't necessarily need to have the same ultimate objective, but they have a share in the business to the extent that it's a financial share. It's a very specific type of interest, and it's generally an investment return interest where money has been put in, and so it's what return will we get from that. There are certain rights and responsibilities that can be exercised at shareholder level, but those rights and responsibilities are very different from the ones that the law provides to directors, who is the board is the second hat. And the law says that directors, the interest in the company is in exactly the opposite direction. Directors are legally obliged to act in the best interests of the entity. And so the interest is very, very different, because here we have a group of people, and this is where the legislation internationally has clarified over the last number of years that it's ultimately the role of the board where accountability lies. That's one of the reasons I've drawn a solid line between the shareholders and the board, because the board is the group of people that together carry ultimate liability. And then obviously there's this third role of management or operations, where the work is actually done in a business. And the interest there is actually a mutually beneficial interest. It's called employment. And so people who work at management level are employed to perform a function, and they're paid an income to perform the function. The challenges with governance is that the same person may be sitting and having 2 or 3 of these relationships with the company. And so one of the challenges we find is if individual members in the board who happen to be shareholders or happen to be involved in the management of the company don't properly understand the distinction between the 3 roles, the 3 different hats, and the roles and responsibilities, rights and responsibilities attached to each of those, then we can often get bad decision making, because ultimately the law creates the liability at board level, and board members are expected to exercise effective decision making and then provide the operations of the business, the framework for moving forward and delivering on that ultimate function or strategic objective of the business. And so one of the things that we do, as I said, is we use this as a foundation stone to help board members, individual directors and boards together to think through their roles and responsibilities. And so intertwined into the program is this concept of the three hats. The second thing that often people aren't taught at business school, university, is how to run an effective board, which essentially starts with the who question. So first is who should be on the board. And here we often see it emphasized in terms of the individual. So we look for board members and we look for them in terms of purely their individual characteristics, instead of understanding that the individuals on a board are there to essentially serve the team, who is there to essentially serve the company. That's the way it works. The individual is there to serve the team, is there to serve the company. And if we simply focus on the individual directors themselves, we end up often with very good board members, but who cannot work together as a team. And so that's the second thing that we try to emphasize. We use a tool to help put together the team, and this is another part of the program. It's called the Contribution Compass. It's a profiling tool, similar to some of the other ones, the DISC profiling, Myers-Briggs. This one in particular is specifically designed to answer the question, what is the contribution of the individual to the team? And there's a north-south in the compass. You know, these are people at the top who are activating, they initiate, they start, they generate lots of ideas. Sustaining are people who tend to keep things going. In entrepreneurial ventures, we often get too many of these people and too few of these people. All right. So putting those together on the board is important so that we have a balance of perspectives. The east-west are those people who tend to be what we often refer to as more extroverted. They work together with people. They think together with people. Very good at teamwork, initiating not just the ideas, but initiating and activating the energy in different people. The opposite of that is what we call tempering. These are people who are very analytical. They make sense of things not necessarily together with people, but often by themselves. They tend to be more introverted, and they tend to analyze, and so they bring that value to the table. The reality is each individual, each one of us, has their own unique combination of those four different energies: activating, inspiring, sustaining, and tempering. And so what we do when we put a board together is we try to understand who's already on the board and try to balance the board with people who are not the same as the people who are already there. Because what tends to happen is if you get too many of the same kind of people on the board, then you tend to do some things really, really well, and some things are either ignored or overlooked, and you don't do that well. And so part of that process of balancing a board is to look obviously at the profiles, but also to look at what are the core values of skills of the people who are on the board. Skills not just in terms of directorship, but skills also in terms of specialized skills. We look at the factors and cover the factors of independence. So what other interests, what other agendas, what other relationships does each director have that would either impinge on or provide them with an independent perspective? And it's also important to recognize that when the law looks at all directors, it provides exactly the same responsibility, authority, and liability to all directors. And so we recognize that in terms of not just the three hats and the interests, but also in terms of who sits on a board. And so we build that into the program. And then the program is built around fundamentally what we call a board methodology, which is essentially, what does a board actually do? So what do these team members actually spend their time doing in a board process? And we use a model called the SADAR Enterprise Governance Compass, which breaks the role or the function or the conversations of a board down into 8 core segments, which need to be included in a 12 to 18 month board process or board cycle. Talking about things like the strategy together with the culture of the business, and how does that, impact who should lead the business. Leadership of the business being how does the board engage with management, and how does that work in terms of policy framework. This cluster at the bottom, including things that impact how we make decisions, all right? Engaging with stakeholders, understanding returns and sustainability issues, integrated reporting, integrated thinking, including concepts of risk management, risk governance, compliance. Then the whole concept of financial results and financial optimization, the perspective of a board on money, answering questions like, well, do I need to be a specialist in finance to sit on a board? Not necessarily, but you certainly need a working knowledge of money. And then ultimately, how do we keep relevant? How do we keep on track? Evaluation and improvement. So the program is built around the board methodology. And so the three key elements that we try to, the foundation stones are the three hats: who should sit on a board, and then how does a board actually do its work? What does it get involved in doing? And so part of the process is then to say, how do we structure this into a program that combines, as I said earlier, the technical aspects and the practical aspects? And we put together what we call a learning journey of 11 modules. The first two of which, to give you some insight, are foundational. They provide some of the foundational thinking where we unpack a bit further the board introduction, types of directors, duties, the three hats, together within module 2. How do we put together a board? How do we construct a board? What are some of those things we put together? Each person on the program does a contribution compass profile, and we use that to put you into boards on the program. And then we start the compass, which starts with strategic direction, planning, implementation, and measurement. Thinking, module 4, about organizational culture, and how does one create that? How does that relate to some of the structures? The introduction to committees, how does that work? And how does that impact the culture of the organization? Module 5 essentially then looks at the integration or the link between the board and management, which is through the CEO or the managing director. And how does one put in place a performance program that is aligned with the culture of the business, succession planning, those kind of things. You can imagine the content. We have lots of conversations around the specifics and the application in different contexts of these concepts. The module 6 onwards, which about stakeholder engagement, sustainability, and social and environmental responsibility, which goes very closely together with the sustainability element, and also thinking about shareholder returns expectations, because obviously in terms of a business, the impact of the business is not only seen in terms of financial impact, but also broader impact. Module 8, risk appetite, tolerance management, along with thinking about compliance. And all of these things, right through from stakeholder engagement, the expectations of returns of shareholders, along with risk appetite, are essentially a cluster of things that we need to keep in mind throughout our decision-making process as a board. Obviously aligning it with what was on the previous slide, strategy and culture. And then module 9, budget setting, management, financial management. We answer the question there, what should the board's perspective on finance be? And how does the board engage around these issues? Module 10, board and company performance evaluation, and picking up on some of those key areas there. And then we have module 11, where we wrap it up and finalize the program. How we structure things on a month-by-month basis over the 11 months is we limit to 20 per class. There is an application online to join, and after this workshop, we'll be sending you those details if you don't already have them. There's a scheduled workshop. It's a half day per month, 8:30 to 12:30, where we unpack both the technical aspects of themes as well as run the board meetings in those sessions. So those run from September 2019 to August 2020, and attendance of those, you get a certificate of attendance and a certificate of competence. Then there's online material. So to supplement that, and it will probably, we find, take another day and a half to 2 days online material, reading, videos and audio, self-reflection, and then the board packs, and then the reading, 2 books, one called Traversing the Avalanche, and then we have yet to finalize the Ghana book, but we use another legislative framework book. So the example I've got there is from Kenya, where we use a book called The Foundation of Kenya's Company Law, to give some background, some insight into the actual frame, the legal framework that board members operate in. Traversing the Avalanche is written by the founder of SEDAR, and it really unpacks the concepts on the program, the SEDAR Enterprise Governance Compass, and it has been used widely across a range of companies. And so we use it to unpack and to provide content, and there's a lot of information in that as well. In terms of outcomes, what are we looking to do? We're looking to essentially aid individuals to develop an understanding of an effective and integrated board methodology and effective board. We also want to create the experience of sitting on a board through the assimilation experience throughout the program. Identify in the process where people are strong and where they are weak, where there are opportunities to develop further. And we find that a lot of directors identify their own areas to do extra work in as they go through the program, as well as apply the methodology to their own businesses. We see a lot of people who attend the program actually take the tools and templates on the program that we provide in the board packs and apply them to their own businesses on a regular basis. And feedback has been great in terms of the practical application of those. And then we do want to ensure a working knowledge of the essential tools required for effective board meetings, making sense of things like governing documents, the founding documents, the relating documents, shareholder agreements, appointment of directors, and then things that run into a board process. How do agendas work, board packs, minutes of meetings, board papers, etc., etc., etc. And the challenge we often find is that what happens many times is that board members sit in the boardroom and they don't have time to actually develop their skills. They're expected, not just by the boards they sit on, but also by the law, to be able to perform as a director from day one. And so the development of directors is often something that we think happens in the boardroom, but it seldom does. There's no time for this in the boardroom. And in terms of the focus, we do understand your goals at the end of the day. We understand that you're sitting saying, and we've built this into the program, there's a desire to get appointed as a director, break out of the struggle, determining the first step. We often find over the program that people find opportunities open up for them. A lot of people are saying they've been recently appointed to a board, and so we believe that we can add value to the boardroom immediately. And we often see people who on the program, as I said, give feedback on how they've been able to apply very, very quickly what they've learned. We also understand that people sitting on the program are wanting to take their skills to the next level. We have had people who've sat on boards before and yet are always saying how valuable it is to not only revisit some of the things they've maybe fallen into the habit of doing, but also learn new ways of doing things. And we use the program as an opportunity to do that as well. We also understand that many people are sitting as shareholder managers. So go to the 3 hats. They're shareholders, they run businesses, but essentially, how do you unlock the value in your business without opening up what we call the governance space where the board sits? And that's where we need to create maximum value, and we recognize that. And then we also understand that it's about achieving recognition as someone who knows what it means to be a high-performing director and to add credibility to the profile when you apply for directorship. And one of the things we encourage people who've been on the program to do is register with the SEDAR Director Network. And that's a place where there are ongoing opportunities to build skills as well as to sit on boards. And so to close, we are going to be providing you after this with further information, links on how to register, and you're welcome to go to our website to do that. And we invite you to join the program, challenge your thinking, obviously improve your prospects, think about what is valuable as an independent director or a director in progress, begin your journey as a high performance director. So I trust this time has been valuable. That's what the Applied Directorship program ultimately is all about. That's where it came from. And please, if you have any other questions, please get hold of us as we send you more information following this. Thank you very much.